all set. Yes.
I move to approve the agenda with one minor change, removal of item 3.0 consent agenda, as we have no individual items listed outside of the consent agenda.
Second that, I guess, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, agenda, if we move to report on contracts, we have a presentation on the Generation Citizen contract, please.
Can I, the consent agenda have the minutes
Oh,
of the
It does
last
not.
meeting?
it just didn't
Okay.
specify underneath.
Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't have a meeting in September, but we had one in August, those were the ones that you were
Okay, so
approving.
approval of minutes. Is there any questions about the minutes?
From the August.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, this item doesn't have it. So yes, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2025 meeting of the Finance Committee as drafted.
Any questions or discussion of the minutes? Here are none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved. So can we move to the approval of the Generation Citizen?
Hi, Michaela Keegan, Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Thank you for having us here tonight with me. I have Dr. Siobhan Ryan. She is our Director of Social Studies and Civic Education. She works with Generation Citizen often and frequently with our work on Action Civics. We're here tonight because we have a sole source contract in Generation Citizen in the amount of $62,000. Generation Citizen provides a crucial service for us. This year, we're only using them with our high school students, but we've used them over the past several years with middle and high school. We are pivoting and shifting to just utilizing their support and their services with our high schoolers, with our civics class, because with the new graduation regulations, the Action Civics project is a graduation requirement. So that's new for the class of 2028 and beyond. And so we decided to focus our work with them on our civics courses in high school. We're using a different curriculum for our 8th graders for their Action Civics project. They provide, the support they provide is curriculum, coaching of teachers. They do individual coaching of teachers who teach civics. It's in all of our high schools. All of our students take the course. The culminating project happens in the spring. And you're probably familiar with the culminating kind of event, which is at the State House and at City Hall, where our students go and they present their Action Civics community-based projects. And it's a really wonderful way for them to demonstrate their learning. And Generation Citizen coordinates as part of our contract with them. They do all of the coordination for us for that opportunity for our students in May. So that's a really helpful service that they provide for us and a great opportunity for our students and their civics teachers to come together, share their learning in the community, where their projects are based on, and to get feedback and questions from state leaders, city leaders, local leaders, and from other stakeholders. It's kind of an overview of what Generation Citizen does for us and how we're shifting our work with them this year, because to focus on our 10th graders, because that is our graduation requirement.
Okay, just have one very quick question, I think. It's so it's $62,000, it's $2,000 per teacher, so that's 25 teachers, and then the remainder is curricular fees or?
Go ahead, go on.
The remainder is for busing and coordination of the City Hall event and the State House event.
That was my only question. Did anybody else have any questions?
I think the only question I had was, I see there's a huge difference per school on the attachment. Is that because of the number of educators that are getting that training?
Yeah,
Obviously, our high schools vary in size and.
Vary in size and
Yeah.
vary in experience.
Yeah.
So some schools this year they have new teachers
Okay.
teaching the course, so they'll be provided with the support from Generation Citizen.
And then, let's see, if we look at, say with Mount Pleasant, for example, and Central, you see, a $4,000 difference, those two teachers. Some schools like Central have many teachers who each teach one or two sections of civics, while other schools, Mount Pleasant, they have 3 teachers that teach multiple sections of civics. So it's because it's per teacher, that's why you see the variation in how much it costs per school.
And this is an annual, it's a support and training kind of.
Yeah, it's both. So we're working to sustain this work. So the contract in previous years has been much more expensive because of the work with middle school and high school. But we know that we need to be able to absorb this work, sustain it without needing an outside partner. But we're just not there quite yet, especially this being really year one of the graduation requirement. We want to make sure that every student has exactly what they need and we're able to support teachers in doing that. So our goal is to eventually be able to sustain it, but there are just a really valuable partner in the work, and then that demonstration event at City Hall and State House is something that we really value for our kids. And so that's where we are now with the contract.
Are there any other questions?
I just have one more comment. I want to say thank you to the team for elevating this contract and also the work around civic certification. I know that obviously it's a requirement, so we need to do it, but board members spent the summer out in our community listening to folks, and that was a recurring theme, that it was really important to our community as a whole, that when students leave PPSD, that they've learned to be civically minded, civically engaged human people. And so we're really excited to know that this ties back into that community value and that wonderful student outcome. So thank you so much for that.
And I want to thank, Dr. Ryan. I mean, she works day in and day out with all the teachers on making sure they have what they need. You can imagine there's so much happening you can imagine, as you know, there's so much happening in the school all the time. So to really be able to help our schools understand, not just like you said, as a requirement, how this really can live in the curriculum and in the experience of 10th graders has been really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Could I have a question? For the high school, like, are we, for this contract, are we giving teachers resources or trainings, or are we completely thinking of hiring new teachers for this certification?
No, this is all part of the contract. We use our existing teachers and Generation Citizen. They have a robust curriculum that they introduce to the teachers. They also provide professional development workshops at a couple of venues in late winter and spring. And they also then come into the schools and they'll do one-on-one coaching with teachers.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the contract, to recommend approval of the contract?
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
That passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your time and for your work. So the next contract consideration is the Pearson VALS Assessment Library.
Julie Lombardi, I'm the executive director of student support. Nice to see you again. So I'm respectfully requesting the approval of a contract with Pearson in the amount of $76,200.75. So this is a digital assessment library. It's used by special educators, social workers, psychologists, speech pathologists. This is a renewal. We've been using DAL since 2021, and it provides a number of assessments and evaluation tools utilized through special ed. This has replaced, like for us, it has replaced the physical testing kits, and it keeps all of our testing in one place. and the evaluations are always up to date, so we never have to buy like new kits. It's always up to date for us. They do provide training modules and free trainings with this purchase. And it definitely gives us more testing variety than if we were to have to buy them individually.
So just out of curiosity, how does it compare cost-wise to prior arrangements?
So, kits individually are like $1,500 to $2,000 for one kit. And some, we would have like, say, I mean, there were at one time where we only been able to like purchase, they were like 6 kits at one time. And so the psychologists or whoever speech teachers would have to always share, so we'd keep them like centrally located and we'd have to come and get them, and then it would kind of create like a lag in testing because they had to share kits. Because if we had to buy a kit for between 1,500 and 2,000 for every, we have 29 sites, 60 social workers and 40 speech pathologists. So it's definitely for us a savings as to having to buy so many individual kits. Plus the special educators, several special educators that use it for education testing as well.
And those people who are doing that testing, are they all in-house employees or are they contractors?
Nope, in-house. We do have some contractors that will use it, but mainly in-house. We have a few contractors right now with speech and sight, but other than that, they're all in-house.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the Pearson TALS Assessment Library contract.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we are recommending to the full board that should be approved. All right. And the next, thank you very much for your time. And the next item is an informational item. This is actually things that we've already voted to approve. We've already approved the 25-26 ordinances, but there have been adjustments. Chris, you want to choose or? Yeah, you want it?
Yeah, whoever says no.
The team will present.
Yeah, whichever.
I don't want to.
I don't want to throw it in the
But just like big picture, we've talked about this, our budget is, we have to make decisions before we have all the information we need. And so whenever we are working on our proposed budget in the spring, that's before state aid is finalized. State aid is not ultimately final until the General Assembly votes on it. So historically, we've had to make adjustments afterwards based on that, as well as any other changes that arise. So probably the best place to start is, and we can go as deep as people want, is the final revenue, which Chris.
It was in the last page.
Okay. So we'll talk about what revenue changes we have from the proposed budget in the spring to where we are now, and then we'll transition to expenses. So big picture changes to revenue were twofold. One was a change in state aid, and the second was additional revenue that came in from Medicaid. So the state aid front, if you recall, we had talked about kind of two paths, or two options we thought we were facing in the spring. One, which was the budget which we proposed, which was keeping the student success factor the same. And one was a proposal that was on the governor's proposed budget that would have increased our state aid by $4 million. We thought that $4 million was slightly not realistic, but typically there have been upward changes in our state aid from what was in the March numbers to what was the final number. And so that proved to be the case again, in that the final state aid did not go up by that full $4 million, but it went up by $1.6 million. So we saw slightly better state aid than had been in our proposed budget in June. If you also recall, one of the ways we kind of hedged those two options was to put fund balance or our reserves into our plans for FY 25. Basically, as an insurance policy, if no state aid were to come in, we would have to use $2.5 million worth of reserves. Never something we like to do, but the reason we do that is the alternative is to cut all the way deep and then add a bunch of stuff back in the summer, and it's way too late to hire teachers and things like that. So it feels like it was a prudent strategy. So we were able to reduce and not have to use reserves for this year, which is good. And that's, again, in part because of the increase in state aid, that 1.6 million you see. The other one was also good news, and one in which we think was based on some late information from last year that factors into our budget for this year. So towards the tail end of last year, we started to see some significant increases in Medicaid reimbursement. There had been some spikes in Medicaid reimbursement over the past few years, and some of that was attributed to compensatory services in the pandemic that we owed students. But what we saw this past year was a sustained increase in Medicaid revenue, attributed to both just providing more services and but there's more people are actually able to qualify.
Like RBTs now and can qualify.
Social workers, I think, in
Yeah,
ways that
social
can,
workers.
so we actually can build more.
Plus, plus there was a rate increase in January of 25. The rate increase, the reimbursable rate has increased at the state and the federal level. So that creates into a large part of why we saw such a large increase later on in the year of fiscal 25, and we're going to hopefully continue to see that trend. So it was twofold: the rate and the reimbursable rate increase, and the amount of people that could bill for service providers was opened up as well.
So overall, that led to, when you take the state aid increase, we pull back on the fund balance that we use, and then like rosier projections on Medicaid, a roughly 2.5% increase in revenue projected for this year, and as part of our planned budget. So I can transition to the expense side, so how we then adjusted our expenses based on that revenue, but happy to answer questions that folks have on revenue.
I don't have any further questions on the revenue side.
Just a quick question. I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, the state increased the budget by 1.6 million.
Correct.
So in that case, how is the district planning to use some of this money? Are we gonna bring some of the program that we bring some talents maybe we have, remove, or like how is the district planning to use this?
So we'll talk through that on the expense side. So some of that we'll talk through the kind of, to get to the 2.5 billion increase, how that money was allocated up.
Actually, just on the revenue sheet, one thing, just to clarify why it's laid out this way. So at the bottom it has total state aid. So the total.
So it takes it to, sorry,
Yeah.
So it takes the 304, 937.64,
Yeah.
and the 726 down the bottom. Which
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
total state aid at 305,657. The 726 really isn't a revenue that comes in. They offset our expenditures for non-public transportation. But if you look at the total aid, if you go to the RIDE website and look at the total state aid given to Providence, it'll show the 305,657. The $726,000 really isn't a revenue. They offset our monthly expenditures for our statewide transportation fund.
Okay.
All right, but they consider the revenue on their side, but we don't actually take the money.
Good action.
Good point.
Okay, no, it's just to clarify that. Thank you.
There's no.
So if we go to the appropriation ordinances, Ms. Moran, we'll go to your questions. The appropriation ordinance is how funds are allocated. And you'll note there's a proposed amount on the far left side, final amount and then a delta in between. And again, two major changes that from the proposed amount to the final amount. The kind of more straightforward one is our school-based changes, these all net to zero. And when we work with schools in the fall, we say, all right, based on your starting school, anything you would change in your budget, they're not making personnel changes, but they're doing things like, I don't want to buy, I'm actually okay on buying computers, I want to buy more art supplies. So they move money between lines, and hence why all the school-based changes net out to zero. And what you're seeing is like an aggregate change, or reclassifying something that was classified as a online platform is actually a curricular expense. So all netting to zero, not necessarily new investments.
We also give the new school year an opportunity to tweak the budget that was proposed in late winter and early spring, that school year. Now, fall isn't the same one, so give them an opportunity to look at the budget that was proposed and put their twist or spin on any initiative that they want to move forward to. So we're not handcuffing, if you will, to the budget that was proposed, give them an opportunity to make some changes. Business case.
So then the more nuance, the kind of meatier ones are changes that are either increases in expenditures or decreases that net to the $2.5 million increase in revenue. So what I thought I could do is kind of talk through the biggest changes, and then again, happy to go into more nuance that any people would see. But let's talk through some of the proposed expenditure increases. The biggest ones you'll see are is in salary, and which is that top category, and connected to that on your benefits and special items, things around retirement, and FICA, because those are all salaries and benefits. So one of the things that had not been finalized when we were with the board in June was any of our 3 contracts, our budget, our labor contracts. So we have since finalized all 3. And while we had placeholders in our current year budget for salaries, there were some that once we saw revenue appearing a little better, we were able to provide more in terms of salary and benefits for employees. So, for example, the PTU contract offered 1% retroactive to midway through last year, so that was one. So that was one, and that as we finalized the contract, that led to both increases in salary and fringe because we were able to use some of the additional revenue to account for salaries and benefits for employees. There's also a special education incentive we have been offering to our ECS and autism teachers. That's allowed us to close a number of those vacancies. It's a pilot we've kind of agreed to with the PTU, and so it wasn't certain that we would continue doing it. But again, let's see if we were excited to continue to do it. So there were also some like minor changes, onesie twosies on like positions, but in general, the large change there were the finalizing our 3 labor contracts, as well as that incentive I mentioned. The next kind of increase was,
Sorry.
yeah, please.
Can somebody, is it possible, so somebody can run downstairs and open the door, apparently you got all this stuff. Yeah, we'll go off, yeah, someone might have walked it. I'm sorry.
Next one was UGC technology line.
That was smart. Yes, everyone's smart.
So the, sorry, is this computer hardware?
57375.
Where this is it?
Last page.
Yes, computer hardware under capital. And so I think we had this in our original proposed budget early on, which was our standard Chromebook refresh. We took it out this past year and instead used a one-time source for technology funding. That's not a good sustainable way to do this because this is a purchase we do every year. So this was something we added back knowing that we want to kind of dedicate a line item for just our Chromebook purchases. So you can go into greater detail, but in our typical year, we purchase a new Chromebook for every third grader, sixth grader, and ninth grader because they typically have a 3-year lifespan. And so that allows us to do a refresh by the time a kid gets to sixth grade, and we're buying a new one for our fifth grade, sorry, we're buying a new one for the next year.
So just the way you're going to finance that,
So we, for this
just explain that a little bit.
yeah, well, so we did not have, for last year, we used a one-time funding at the end of last year to purchase Chromebooks for this year. But when we were, for the purchase that we would be doing this spring, we did not have, like, we would have had to find another solution for that.
Okay.
So it's always kind of 1 year, we're paying for it.
It was a Band-Aid that we don't have to use.
That's the other ones you'll notice is on electricity, water, maybe custodial slightly too, is with the Loro lease. We had expected that some of that, those utilities and custodial fees that you shared if the building was leased to a charter school. Because that didn't happen, we had to assume all the costs there. So there were some impacts to construction, but also impacts a bit to our operating budget in the form of utilities and custodial.
So you took, I think you had said, Chris, about 50,000.
So $50,000 in
Was for
custodial.
Carl.
Yeah, and then about a little over $100,000, we have to increase our utility lines, because we won't be sharing those expenses or those spaces.
And the remainder of the increase in the custodial is just due to,
Yeah, we can talk about, so the additional $200,000 is for charge reimbursable, so anything that we want to fix at a building that can't go through the city's revolving fund, we have to, in order to maintain the spaces in our building.
so I know you mentioned that to me before, and I forgot to ask, is that for repairs that have been done or repairs that we would like to do this year?
We have control over those non-emergency repairs that may happen.
So we have the option.
We have the option to say yes or no, but some of the stuff's, as we know, as winter approaches, the age of our buildings.
And you don't know how bad the winter's gonna be, burst pipes or whatever.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten in a good place with the city where we try to leverage the revolving fund as much as we can to both do proactive work as well as cover some of the emergencies. But there have been times that things are either not eligible or it happens so quickly that we have to procure a vendor and the city ultimately can't fund it. So you know, that's been a lesson. As much as we try to push in the revolving fund, there's still a remaining portion that we need to cover for base services.
Sorry, I heard a couple different numbers and I want to make sure I got that
Sure.
right. So by not having the other half of the Laurel building leased, because right now we have ASA Messer Elementary is occupying half of that building.
That's right.
Right? And so just understanding the impact to this year's budget. So I heard 50,000 in custodial, 100,000
A little over 100,000.
for utilities. And was there another number I heard? Okay, that was.
Yeah,
The other
Okay.
$200,000 was not specific to Colorado, it was just
In general. Okay.
So that's where we see an increase of 250.
So $100,000 just for utilities for that building.
Well, it's more than that, that's how much we had to increase the.
Yeah,
So
we're
that's for half
gonna
of it.
split it.
So it's actually $20,000 a year. for utilities as well.
200,000.
Or $200,000 a year, rather.
Just a quick question. Do like the energy or the city like give us like any credit for energy?
So it's been a complicated history. I think we are in a better spot, but historically, we essentially got them for free in that they gave us credits that lowered our utility bills. There was a point in time where they stopped giving us those, and you know we had disagreement about whether they were owed to us from the Crowley Act. We had a settlement agreement, and then in this current fiscal year, we reached a mutual agreement that we would essentially buy credits at a lower rate than the credits were worth. So it's like almost like buying a $20 gift card with $10. So, you know, the city gets more money that they would otherwise not have, and we're able to lower our utility bills. So it felt like a win-win, obviously with a little bit of a complicated background on how we got there.
Can I ask a follow-up to my earlier question? Just, again, to Chairman Williamson's point, the projected cost for utility for the whole Laura building, even though we're using half, is 200,000. So it's a 100,000 increase in that line item for this budget. Maybe this isn't apples to apples, but I'm curious for some of our newer facilities, what the average utility cost is. Understanding that every building is so different, do you have a sort of a comparable?
Yeah, I think that's that for it. I just want to add that the total utility cost for Colorado far exceeds $200,000. We have to increase the budget 100, doesn't mean no. So I think it's that was the increase of what we go, but I can give you the number of what we budgeted for Laura, what the historical spend was there when it was occupied.
Yes.
When it was shared with debate. Who's going with the
Was
many
Laura
buildings-
still in there?
how
I
many
think the
buildings-
Laura
It was Laura
was still
and the-
there.
yeah,
and
it was
the
Laura,
debate was
yeah,
in the
yeah.
back,
I should probably know this, but I don't. How many buildings do we have?
Online right now, 37.
Oh, yeah, no, I should know it, because there's the number between the number of schools we have and the number of buildings is slightly different.
The total number of buildings, if you with administered with us in 379 is probably about 41-ish.
So is that, does the figure for water, telephones, or utilities?
Covers
That's
district-wide.
all of the buildings?
Correct.
Yeah,
So-
with the one minor nuance that how much in energy credits are our utilities limited by?
3.
Right, and that our electricity bills actually, is that, am I thinking of that right? Chris? Our electricity bill is actually 3 million higher than this because
We took the credits, net
credits
credits.
lowered it.
Oh, so those are credits are for this year?
We recognize the credits in fiscal 25 and fiscal 26.
Okay, so it's actually 3 million, it's actually 3 million above that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Over 6.5 million.
so we're basically, I mean, so at the average cost for each of our buildings, I think comes out to 250,000 a year. Like that's the average and obviously some of these are unit buildings and some are, so, you know, that's a lot.
I know there have been changes, but as a follow-up to that follow-up, and then we can move on. My apologies for asking lots of questions around
No,
this,
no,
but
that's
this
fine.
has been this is of deep interest to the community as a whole, I think. I recall, I believe in spring, we had an update around capital plans, and as obviously those are evolving, we're working on phase 4A right now. But I thought I had heard in that presentation an estimate of how much we'd be saving in utilities if we are able to execute on our capital plan of all students in new spaces by 2030. Can you ballpark that?
Yeah, and
Without
we
going.
just did this exercise recently, and so Chris can take my math. I think when we looked at the custodial.
Sorry, gentlemen.
No, like the impact on the custodial contract, because that's a pretty clear square footage, was like
Okay.
between like 2 to 2.5 million or something like that. Because just having less square footage to clean. And then utilities, I don't have, I think we had assumed all in like 3 million, so between custodial and utilities, that was potentially the savings of heating, cooling,
Less maintenance.
less maintenance for less square footage.
Thank you.
So I guess the question, yeah, probably something probably not a rabbit hole we want to go down to tonight, but it would be worthwhile separating out an analysis between how much of the savings are we getting from just reducing square footage and how much of the savings are we getting from the newness of the buildings, which would be reduced maintenance costs and I would assume
Utilities.
reduced utilities because of more efficient heating systems and better insulation, et cetera, et cetera.
Windows.
Windows, doors.
The windows.
Built to modern standards, yeah. So that would be,
Different zones.
that would be a good analysis to sort of do, but I think we would want to separate it out, like the savings based on
Oh,
the
absolutely.
square footage reduction versus the square footage based on the having the.
You have five phase of when the buildings are going on, we can go by phases too.
Yeah, I think this was assumed at the end of 2023.
Thank you, sorry for the rabbit hole, but I
No.
think it's a helpful context when we're looking at the appropriations ordinance to understand, where some of our extra costs are falling and how that sort of is interrelated with the decisions made around capital plans and capital revolving fund, et cetera. So-
Yeah, because it ends up being a hidden cost of when you have more buildings or more square footage than you need, it's like real dollars that you're spending on stuff that you'd rather, so it's a $200 to spend more on electricity versus $200,000 on an
Any
extra
other
social
thing on
worker,
this
like,
list.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Thank you.
This contract, they just did do it to realize the savings by reducing square footage.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the older custodial contract, there was no kind of mechanism to reduce square footage, and so I actually don't know how it was done whenever things came on or offline, aside from like side agreements, but this contract is pretty clear when you add the square footage or take the square footage offline, there's math that you adjust the contract to. So it allows us, and we kind of knew this going into that we were gonna be having changes in square footage, so we wanted to have a clear mechanism for how we reduce it rather than like renegotiate a contract. So those were on the big addition side. In terms of the reductions we saw in expenditures, they net to that 2.5. The biggest one we saw was a reduction in transportation costs. And so that was thanks to a pilot that RIDE is doing. So per state law, we need to transport Providence students who attend private and parochial schools. Oftentimes that leads us to have a bus that might have 5, 10, but very few students on it. And RIDE also services those schools through the statewide transportation team. So they work with us to look at some of our routes, particularly for our private and parochial schools, and actually add those students to their routes. And it helped us reduce 10 buses. And a bus, the rough rule of thumb is like $100,000, right? So, yeah, so that was a big win, and I think something they're exploring longer term, but it was like a pretty clear savings, and it doesn't really cost RIDE anything extra because those buses are already running, and it's one less kind of small route for us to run.
And does that account for the entire change here, the 1.1 million,
There was also
or a significant portion of it?
it's the 10 buses, a significant portion of the decrease. What I want to add too is when we put the budget together, we weren't sure how many additional runs we would have with the closure of Kennedy and the relocation of it to East Hopkins, and also moving from East Massachusetts to Colorado. So we had a placeholder for a number of buses. With the team looking at their routes, we were able to reduce 2 buses and 2 vans versus what we had as a placeholder in the proposed budget. So kudos to the team to look at those routes and looking at them. So realizing savings in the final budget.
That's a significant savings.
And then lastly, we have some changes, smaller changes, but in unemployment insurance, if you recall, a few years ago that went up after we had kind of the big round of layoffs. That has continued to go down a bit, so we feel comfortable lowering that amount for next year. And then also small, but we've done some investments around our box bills and intercoms at our schools. Because it's really outdated technology that required very specialized, only a few people could do it. So with those investments, we've had to do less of those repairs.
Also reduce the number of phone lines in each building, reducing those. significant savings on carrier costs.
So, so those big, on the, so to, Mr. Mahmood's questions before, those were the main kind of additions and reductions in expenditures that got us to that 2.5. So it wasn't, there weren't any kind of big programs we added aside from closing out our, I'd say our PTU contract, having a sustainable source for technology moving forward, and continuing with the special ed bonuses, as well as responding to some good news and bad news we had on expenditures. And then we're happy to go through the ordinances on cost-based compensation. They're a lot smaller because there weren't a ton of personnel changes. So again, the compensation ordinance, you'll see the salaries for PTU 1033 and 1339 have gone up because of the contracts that were agreed to. You'll see some of the notes on positions that were added or removed. There weren't a ton of major position changes post July 1, aside from some of those salary changes. But happy to,
I'm happy to forego reviewing that if people are comfortable with it, but if anyone wants to go through it, we can.
I reviewed it ahead and I don't have any specific questions or concerns about the compensation ordinance.
You're all right? Okay. I think we could just pass that one over. And then I know there were a couple of changes in the classification ordinance.
yeah, so I'm not sure
So I think there was a position, there was an extra vice principal or two vice principals.
Yeah, so we added an additional assistant principal at Roger Williams, and then you'll see the reduction at West Broadway with the reduction of the principal and addition of the assistant principal with the merger of those two campuses.
Yeah, just to play back, Roger Williams actually had, in their budget, had proposed a reduction of assistant principal, so in this, it actually restores it back, so it's not, compared to what they had last year, they had the same, but in their budget, they had originally planned to cut.
Good point.
Restore it. And then once Principal Henderson was named as the principal over both West Broadway, the position at West Broadway was swapped from a principal to a.
So, and the other changes here in terms of positions being, that most of these, and feel free to correct me if this is characterizing it, are more or less, sort of renaming positions more than, like the,
So there was some changes.
Yeah,
Significant changes at the school level without the principals.
or like in one case, we have as an additional assistant principal. Substitutes the principal. So.
Mostly used.
Or like, facilities manager has been replaced with director of facilities, so. I didn't see anything in here that struck me as particularly no red flags for me on any of this. So, I don't, does anybody else have any questions?
Any specific questions around the classification?
Yeah, I think they only the vice principal. They caught my attention as a new addition. All right, is there
That's it.
anything else you'd like to go over with this? Okay. So this, maybe you could talk us through the procedure here, because this is my first time going through the budget cycle. I think we've been through it before, but, so do we, at this point, does this go back to the board, or does it just?
And I don't want to play lawyer. I think it can go either, I would certainly, I think, could be a report out at the board. You know, the final decision maker on the budget is the commissioner under the intervention. Whether the finance committee wants to, you can take it as an info item, you can take it as a recommendation to, you know, support, whatever. I would just say like it's more.
So, maybe we could have a motion that if anybody asks, we're recommending the, you know, should we just go out and on?
Well, as also a member of the Agenda Redesign Ad Hoc Committee, I will say that my recommendation based on coaching from Council of Great City Schools would be, when in doubt, if it's an informational item, put it on your consent agenda for the full board, because that way we could recommend to advance it to the consent agenda, so it's not even necessarily an item that the board has to approve.
If
It's
it goes
just
on our agenda,
informational.
then it's going on the consent agenda.
But anything under the consent agenda has to take a vote.
Well, it's taking one vote for the whole item. So that,
Right.
that without getting off topic from our finance committee meeting right now and straying too far from this agenda, the consent agenda for the board includes items such as, and can and should include items like the contracts that we're recommending.
Right.
So if the purpose is to update the board so that they are seeing the finalized updated ordinances, I would think that that would be the best way to ensure that they
I can share the materials
see
if
that
you'd like.
and share.
Everything that I sent you, I can send to the full board.
Yeah, why don't we
If
do
that's,
that?
if that's.
And
what
then
you
why
want.
don't we recommend that all finance committee items be put on the consent agenda that we're recommending approval for all of it? Just, I mean, we don't have to vote on the budget in the full meeting, at least from what I'm hearing.
Mhm. Right,
No,
because
but
it's
for
information.
example, in September, at this full board meeting in September, we had items on that agenda that within the consent agenda that were memoranda. So there was a memoranda about some of the facilities updates. There was another memo about some other committee updates. So it includes things that aren't necessarily action items, but
Okay.
that are
Yeah, so,
accepting as reports, I guess,
well, I
as the
don't,
action.
so I guess
So I think my understanding is, since the district made these changes, I think that we can recommend to the board that we, you know, the finance committee, we actually review this, you know, we recommend for approval, then the whole board can, you know, make the sign of the findings.
So I think it would all just go on the consent. I think you're right. I think it would all just go on the consent agenda. So, but I guess my question to you all was, did you want to try to put this on the agenda to go over it all again with the full board? Or do you think we should just kind of let it lay where it is and ask them to trust us that we looked over it, you know?
We are open to what, like, if, I had not been thinking that it'd be a board presentation, but if the board wants that, I mean, maybe if we put on the consent agenda, we could send the materials in advance, then I think some of those have the opportunity, if they wanted to, pull it out and start it.
Yeah.
I think that's very good.
So, would you like just to make a motion?
I
to
make
put
a
it in the consent
motion.
agenda?
To recommend to school board leadership to add the amended PPSD 2025-2026 ordinances as an item on the consent agenda for our October board meeting for informational purposes.
Along with,
Will
those go on automatically. Okay. Is that, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any other business that we need to cover tonight, as far as any of these items go? No, I don't think so. I think we're good. Yeah.
I just wanna say,
Yep.
the district's, you know, saving us money on paying buses, that's remarkable.
Yeah, it was good work. Yeah. And it's good news that we got more state aid than we did. Very nice.
Finance chair.
All right, so, do we have a motion to close the meeting to adjourn?
I'll motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Did President Stevens end up not coming in?
He is meeting with another board member
Oh.
in the conference room on the other side.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
That's
That's what you wanted to be sure.